Hello, viewers of Russian Whips channel. It's Andre again, and today I want to continue my talk about Russians and Russian soul, Russian habits, and Russian culture. If you are interested, please prepare your questions and write me what you want to know about Russians. I'll try to answer from my personal experience being a Russian for 44 years here. Well, the first thing which comes to mind, and a little bit stereotypical, but still it's a first question that most people who first come to Russia or from the Soviet Union would ask, why Russians are not smiling. So it strikes people as a big difference between people here and people elsewhere. I mean, Europe, United States, and so-called civilized countries. So, is it because Russians are just not friendly? Or are they aggressive? Or maybe they just don't want to, see other people a bit misanthropic or psychopathic? Well, it's none of that, but in some cases it could be either of that. But the biggest difference is the cultural background. I will dwell on it in probably more than one uh, video, but I just want to start. For me, the obvious reason for not smiling is, well, simply because people don't feel like smiling. Why would that be? Oh, maybe they have something on their mind. They could be preoccupied, or they could be thinking about something. They could be stressed, or they could be, you know, pissed off. That also can happen. But let's step back a little bit from these immediate reasons and go back to Russian historical background. Russian history has been pretty rough through the ages. There's hardly been like a century where Russians would not fight, and I mean fight massively. There would be some major war or political calamity or disaster which would just make life in Russia the one perpetual ordeal. People would be going to war, uh, you know, get back, get back men wounded or even killed from war, which wouldn't add happiness to a lot of households. So my point is, Russians historically has had a lot of reasons not to be so happy about living here or living at all, which means they have had too many problems and too many things to be unhappy about, which also had an influence on the national character. Well, you would say other peoples would have this too, but nevertheless, they smile and they, are friendly, they greet each other. Okay, Russians do that too, but one big difference being Russians do not smile to strangers as much. They would smile to someone they know or someone they feel sympathy towards, but that may not necessarily be a complete stranger. Russians would be cautious of strangers because nobody knows what that stranger has on their mind. Again, historically, a stranger could be an enemy or just someone coming from, unknown intentions or unknown purpose, and that could be dangerous. So let me just explain. I mean, uh, historically, as I said, Russians have been in war to almost everybody else. All their neighbors at one point have been their enemy, and most of them more than at one occasion. The Poles, the Teutons, the Germans, the French, the English have been allies or enemies, but most of the time enemies, than Tatars, Persians, Turks, Japanese, you name it. I mean, Russians have fought with almost everyone, including Americans in Vietnam and Korea, and perhaps some other exotic and not so exotic locations in modern history. But in ancient history, they have fought everybody, and everybody have fought them. And that one reason Russians would not be so open and so, immediately, smiley to strangers. That's, and I should say that all my point of view. You shouldn't really, it's just my point of view. It's it's based on my personal thinking and on my personal, view on Russian history. Another reasons Russians wouldn't be so cheerful probably lies in the climate of Russia. If you have never been to Russia, you can't imagine how it is to live with 5 to 6 months of chilly or just downright frosty weather. I mean, cold. It's so cold that you couldn't survive without having a solid, dwelling, a solid house or hut, or, you know, so I'm not talking about having a roof over one's head. Roof is not enough. You have to, historically, you've had to have a log, thick log for, to build around your house, house built of logs or 1 foot, thick stone walls to keep the worms inside and to have a warm dwelling. And that means living in Russia has been about pure survival. Winter is a season which you have to be prepared for, and you have to toil and work hard the rest of the year to prepare for. Meaning you have to amass enough food, enough fuel, meaning wood, to be burned in an oven or a stove to survive long and dark Russian winter. Which brings us to just another reasons for Russian gloominess. I mean, not enough sunny days, plain as that. Probably Russia has one of the lowest, amount of sunshine for the territory as populated as it is. And frankly speaking, I personally can testify that Russian winters uh, tend to be long and dark and boring and depressing. I mean, towards the end of it, towards the January or February, people normally would start feeling depressed and just for the lack of sunny days. When you go out to work at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock or even 8 o'clock in the morning, it's still dark. And when you return back from work, as long as 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's it's already dark. So you spend winter, you know, if you work, you hardly see any sunshine at all, only on weekends. And then just since 10 or on 9 o'clock till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's fairly, you know, small amount of sunshine. So all that I believe has had an influence on the Russian, demeanor. Which doesn't mean though that Russians are 100% depressed, gloomy, you know, cautious or just reserved people. I believe they just, for some reason, they have to have a reason for smiling. They cannot just smile or laugh for no reason. Which brings us to a well-known proverb that laughter without a reason is uh, a requisite or is just an attribute of a fool. That's a Russian proverb, and we'll talk about Russian proverbs soon, but that's one of them. So laughing without reason is an attribute of a fool. So you have to have a reason for laughing or smiling. One of those reasons would be you know the person you are smiling to. You feel sympathy towards them, your friend or relative or associate, and you know they're your friend. You know they're not your foe, and you know that they will not use your openness against you. So Russians open up in a more intimate context, not to everybody, not to a stranger. My personal belief that one major reason people in the West are so smiling is because they need to. It's part of culture needing to be pleasant, needing to, you know, be able to be liked and to sell stuff to people. It's as simple as that, because nobody is gonna buy anything from a gloomy salesman. And Russians, by nature, are not salesmen. They're more like agricultural or just craftspeople, or just they're not into that so much. So they haven't felt obliged to be pleasant as long as they feel safe. Probably most of all, Russians just want to be left alone and mind their own business. Okay, and probably not only Russians, some Scandinavians, I would expect too. And again, we share the common climate and the common, you know, uh, common part of common history with Scandinavians. So I think we can understand each other very well. So these are some of the reasons why Russians are not smiling so much. You may want to argue with me or agree with me, or maybe you have some questions or comments on that. So I welcome all of that to my page in YouTube, to the comments, and please feel free to share your thoughts concerning that topic, and I will continue on that later on. Meanwhile, while the season is changed, as you can see, and it's not sunshine and not sunny weather anymore, it's time to drink a good Russian tasty and aromatic tea, which I welcome you to get from my store in the comments below to support this broadcasting. Thanks for watching, and bye bye.